we're just gonna ask you some questions about what your childhood was like growing up in Windham for our project about learning about the 50s through 70s. That's the basics of it.
May I ask you a question, or any of you to start out with? What years do you consider the boomers? I've read some breakdown on it, and in general, what years do you consider boomers? 40s, 50s? I mean, 46 to 64 is what I've seen, but I've also heard an argument that kids born in the late 50s were different than the kids born in the early 40s. The other thing I wanted to ask is, what happened for like 5 or 6 years just before the boomer generation started? Do you know what was going on? World War II. So it made a real difference. And those were the kind of questions I had, and I wondered if you knew that. So I'll be quiet and let you ask your questions.
Is there anybody who wants to start off with a question?
What was your first car?
49 Mercury.
49 Mercury.
53 Mercury.
It was black and it looked like the one in the movie.
61 Ford.
I had a 53 Ford that I never had on the road, but I bought it, took it apart on the front lawn. First one I drove was a 55 Ford.
My parents didn't like me driving at all. I had a hard time getting them to let me use their car, but when they did, it was a 1953 Chevrolet Bel Air, color blue, and standard shift on the column, first, second, and third. So all of us learned to drive with a clutch and not an automatic. That was the big deal.
You couldn't get your license on an automatic.
That's right. You
Yeah,
could.
we took our license on a
Three
stand.
times.
I got mine the first.
It took me
Pickup truck, that's all we had. We didn't get a car until I was in high school.
My first car was a hand-me-down that I had gotten from the doctor's son that was here in town. And it was a Ford Falcon. And as soon as I graduated from high school, my first car that I bought myself was a Ford Mustang. And I still wish I had it.
Yeah.
I didn't know one until after I was
You rode with
married.
me.
Yeah, the old Mercury.
My first car was a 52 Pontiac. That was in 64.
Did you have a curfew? If so, what was it?
Just speak up.
No.
Yeah, probably 9 o'clock.
We all know what time to be home.
They didn't even want me to come home.
And there were nights we had to be in when the light flicked. When the light
We'd
flicked,
be
we
out in
knew
the
it was
driveway,
time to-
just kind of sitting there, and my father would flick the light.
But we would be outside playing every night, tag, flashlight tag.
Kick the can.
Yeah.
Well, we had no TV till we were about 10 years old.
And growing up, at 9 o'clock at night, the fire horn would sound, and that was sometimes considered curfew time. So that was the only curfew, I think, that was ever really imposed. But we were expected to be home most of the time after that.
Yeah, and Jeannie, we played kick the can from
Right.
your house.
Right.
They didn't have a clue what that is.
Well, growing up in the village, we had the alleys.
We called it Tin Can Alley.
Yeah.
So you're saying you grew up in the village. Do you know where the village is?
The village is in South Windham. And Little Falls is across the river in Gorham. And we really were all one village. My growing up, we had 3 grocery stores, a pharmacy, 2 barbers,
Lumber mill.
lumber mill, dry
Getting
cleaners.
machine, everything was in South Windham.
Yeah.
I grew up in North Windham, where at that time we didn't have a pharmacy. We had to go to South Windham to go to the pharmacy to pick up prescriptions or anything like that. And now you look at North Windham, there's at least 4.
When you speak about curfews, I recall that you got up and had breakfast in the morning and you were kicked out for the day. You were in the way by being home. So I'm thinking of video games and all the other things that occupy kids today. We had bicycles. We went everywhere on our bicycle. We went fishing. We had certain places in the neighborhoods which we considered hideouts. You know, we'd go there and we'd think, wait, no one knows about this place. No one's ever seen this place before. And we'd hang out there. In the winter, skiing and sledding until dark, until you saw Venus in the sky. But every day, the curfew was 5 o'clock. To answer your question, by gosh, you better be home at 5 because supper was on the table at 5 o'clock. And if you were 5 minutes late, you were liable to miss dessert. So, but later on in high school, I'm not sure the boys had a serious curfew, but I'll tell you the girls did. So if we were going out with our dates, it was 10 or 11 o'clock or whatever it was. But our parents played pretty loose with the boys, didn't they?
Even with the girls.
I think it was negotiable,
Negotiable.
depending
I have
on
another
what you were
question.
doing.
This is kind of a weird one, but did you feel safe in Windham back then?
Yes, yes.
Yep, there.
We were all over town.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of us had horses. We rode our horses all the way to Bray, Dutton Hill. We used to go picking raspberries and we'd have glass jars to put them in, banging around on the saddle, if you can believe it, because there really wasn't any plastic or anything in those days. So, yeah, it was very safe.
I felt safe, but there were some bullies across the river. Across the river into the Gorham side. And so there were times there was kind of a face-off and we'd have to turn around and go back. But my father had a store, a corner store down in South Windham, and we made pizzas and Italian sandwiches and things like that. And one Christmas Eve, a bunch of drunk, early 20s guys came in and took him out and threw him in a snowbank and beat him up. So there was a few guys, and there was no police station here. It was the county. They'd have to come from the county. And so it took a while for the police to get there. But he was fine. But basically, yes, we felt safe and rode our bikes heavily. You know, nothing really stopped us for too long.
I can remember, lived down on the river road close to Westbrook. I remember hitchhiking to Westbrook, not worrying about that today. I'm sure no one would hitchhike or ride our bikes on the river road.
I know.
Go up at the top of the hill right near where Anderson Road is, off the river road, race down about half a mile. And that's how light the traffic was today. You wouldn't think of. I always shudder when I see somebody biking on the river road now, even though it's been widened and there are some paved shoulders.
We used to slide in the wintertime over the Center Road, start up on the top of the hill and slide down the road. It was never any traffic.
The only time that I was restricted to the yard was there was a stranger sleeping on the side of the road. And my parents said, don't go out of the yard until we give you the all okay, all clear, that he's gone. It's the only time I ever have any restrictions.
What drugs were popular during your childhood?
Friends?
Hula hoop. Flies.
Marbles.
Yes.
Marbles, yes. Pea shooters.
Jumping what do they call them?
Pogo sticks?
Pogo
Pogo
stick.
stick, that's it.
Yeah.
Merry-go-round slide. Jungle gym.
Yeah, the jungle gym came in the mid-50s or so.
Oh, I had jungle gym at my old primary school.
What about when you were in high school? Were there any interesting trends in high school?
Mini skirts.
Rock and roll, and that's when it came in.
We had a lot of dances.
We had a
And
jukebox in the gym.
we had the-
We'd dance at noontime with a jukebox.
our high
Lunchtime.
school, for most of us, most of our growing up, was the old, what is the town office now. I went there for 3 years, and my class was the first one to graduate from this high school.
And what year was that?
That was 65.
And my class was the first class for 4 years in high school. Not that bad.
And Walter and I have the distinction of being the last class out of the old high school community center.
You must be old.
Must be.
It was so crowded that we actually had class on a balcony which overlooked the town gym, what's now the town gym. There was a small closet space back there. Sometimes for a study hall, it would get so crowded that while the kids were having gym, they would close the curtain on the stage and we would have study hall behind the curtain.
And for some of us who took like drafting class, we had to walk from the high school down across Windham Center Road, and there's a little red building there, and we had our drafting, mechanical drawing class there, and they trusted us to walk out of the school, walk down there, and actually come back to class.
Right, Bruce?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to mention, if any of you see someone raising their hand, you can point to them.
Okay, good. Youngster back there that had his hand up.
Did you guys go to, what's the school on High Street?
John Andrews School.
John
Yes.
Did you go to that one?
Yes.
We did.
J.A. Junction.
Summer first,
No, this-
fourth and fifth.
And the town should have kept it up.
Yeah.
K through 6.
Wow. See how it changed?
Mine was 5th grade. I did 1 year. Because I was from North Windham, and they sent just a few of us down there because North Windham schools were too populated. And some of us that came in later in the year, I transferred to Windham 4th grade. And they sent us down there the 5th grade.
I think our class went 4 years in a 3-room schoolhouse to be at Newhall.
Newhall.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yes, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth.
That was
We
sixth
loved it
grade.
there, I did.
Same here.
Now, New Hall is the building that is now in a little apartment building?
Yeah.
Yes.
Down by Dolden's.
And for some of us, I lived just a mile from Newhall School on Route 202. That was the first time I could ride my bicycle to school, and that was a big deal.
It was. I want to just say something about that. And we had a 2-room school also, right up next to the fire station, Friends School. I think it's now the
Resource Center.
Human Services Building. And we had 3 lunches that all took place at the same time. You could have hot lunch, cold lunch, meaning you brought your own, or home lunch. You could leave and you'd have plenty of time to ride your bike home. Mother would have your hot lunch on the table and then you'd go back. So my friend, 2 of my friends who lived close by, we would go to school and we would sign up for home lunch. But we would tell our parents we wanted cold lunch. So we could get on our bikes, we rode our bikes to school, get on our bikes, and we'd go all over town with our lunch, including the swimming hole, which wasn't that far from the school. So we get off, get on our bikes, go down to Pleasant River, there's the swimming hole, go for a swim. The only problem was wet bathing suits. So you'd stuff them into your pack on your bicycle and forget about it. And then your mother's asking questions later on. What's this doing here all moldy and smelly? What's going on? And other people who would see you on your bikes at noontime in the middle of the day. And it was a small town. Everybody knew everybody. They saw us riding our bikes in the middle of the day, and obviously we weren't coming from home. That would get reported. So we never got away with it, but we used to try.
What was a story that you had when you were kids? What happened when you were kids?
Something naughty, sounds like, is that what you're thinking? A mischievous story?
Yeah.
Anyone else? Someone else must have a mischievous. You
I
just heard
plead the
that one.
fifth.
Yeah, what can we tell about?
Let's see.
Well, my brother and I used to get up on the roof on Halloween and spray the kids coming with a hose.
That's genius.
I can remember putting a firecracker into a wishing well at the top of Windham Hill. I admitted it, okay?
Oh, I have one that, we had a babysitter who, I was like 8 years old, 9 years old. It's a horrible story. But I had a babysitter that had boyfriends over. And so, for us to keep quiet and not tell, she gave us cigarettes.
At 8 years old.
But I didn't inhale.
Babyboomers.
So, there you go.
I think Colton
That's South
posted-
Windham for you.
So what did y'all listen to music on when you were kids?
Transistor
Radio.
radios.
Yeah, the translators. Yeah, 45 records.
Yeah.
78.
Yeah.
And the jukebox at lunchtime in high school.
We sure did.
That's amazing.
And if we were good, we could even have it going and dance during that
We always
time.
did that, yeah.
I think as Julie said, it was the early years of rock and roll. So it was like the beginning of, we saw the beginning of Elvis Presley's career, for example, and many of those others. And I have a book that at reunion time we used, and this is remembering when, 1962, that's when several of us graduated. It was the popular music at the time. You probably never heard of a lot of these. Big Girls Don't Cry, Breaking Up Is Hard to Do, Duke of Earl, Good Luck Charm, He's a Rebel, Hey Baby, I Can't Stop Loving You by Ray Charles. That's almost beyond any particular
Everybody knows that,
decade. Johnny Angel, Locomotion, which was a dance, and Mashed Potatoes, which was a dance.
I can
That was what was big in '62. In the movies, Lawrence of Arabia, To Kill a Mockingbird, Dr. No, Lolita, Cape Fear, and The Music Man. Well, that was 1962, our senior year.
And then not too long after that, the limbo.
Yeah,
The limbo and the twist.
yeah.
Of course, the Beatles came along, and they were revolutionary. They had long hair, and nobody had long hair at that time. Everybody had short haircuts, so they were different.
That goes back to the trends they were asking about. The long hair started in the 60s, yep.
I can remember when the Beatles were first on television when they came from England on Ed Sullivan's show, and we all watched it in black and white.
And our parents were disgusted.
Yeah.
Yep.
She's had a hand up a long time.
Yeah.
What was the biggest difference? What is the biggest difference in the towns? In our towns
All the houses.
I think the size, it was just a fraction of what it is now. There were a lot more farms, many of those farms now have been
It was a
carved
farm
up
town.
in the house lots. So what was it, like 3,000 maybe when we were?
Yes,
Yeah.
3,000.
What is it now?
18,000.
There was 5,000,
Yeah.
sort of by the time I graduated.
Okay.
When you would go
But-
someplace, you would know most everybody in town. And now I go in the grocery store, and if I see one person that I recognize, it's like, wow.
Was it 21,000 now in Windham? Something like that?
19 to 20 easily, yep. And it used to be 5,000 when we were in school, yep.
And like Walter said, everybody knew everybody. So you never got away with anything because there was somebody watching.
They call you mother.
Yep.
And then you got your hand up.
Was the state prison in Windham? Was the state prison in Wyndham?
Oh, yes. Her father worked there. He wasn't in there, he worked there.
And what's interesting, they used to go out and work on the roads, and my parents thought nothing about me going out and just chatting with the workers. I mean, they weren't dangerous people, and it was very different than, they didn't have the high fences and so on. Once in a while, people would escape, which meant really just open the door and walk out, but not for long.
It was called a reformatory in those years. And they had a big farm that operated up down near the river road. And, yeah, there was a lot of work. People went out who were, doing time for something, again, that wasn't a severe crime probably in those days. So they were trustees, they were called, and they could go out and work and then come back.
An interesting point was before the high school was here, and the high school was over, and they were building the old new high school. It was the inmates at the reformatory that cleared the land.
My father had an outside crew, and his crew were one of the first ones to work on the Sebago Lake State Park. And they had a building up there where they housed the men at night. And my father would go up and spend the night, and then they'd all get up and after work in the morning.
And you never left your keys in the car.
What was your first job?
Windham Drive-In.
Babysitting.
Yeah.
Picking keys.
Helping out on a farm like at haying time, getting hay in, or picking crops right down near the Windham Westbrook line where the golf course is now, was a big farm. And at harvest time, kids would pick some of the crops.
And Becky and I grew up on a farm, and our parents raised strawberries. So we picked the strawberries and sold the strawberries right out on Route 202. My first job away from home was working at a fish factory in Portland where they canned sardines. And I thought that was the greatest job in the world. It was so much fun. I could drive to Portland, and but when I got home, my mother used to make me take my clothes off on the back porch. I didn't smell the fish, but I guess they did.
As an aside, their mother was one of my not the smoking. Their mother was one of the other babysitters. And I remember churning butter at your house and other things. It was a good time.
Chase, you have one?
What was your like favorite game to play?
Baseball.
Basketball.
Softball.
Oh, softball. But we only had a baseball.
And I think it depends. As a young kid, it was marbles. You know, at
Marbles,
school,
yes.
everybody who was anybody played marbles during recess.
Yep.
But growing older, it became baseball, softball, basketball.
And we played baseball out behind Newhall School every noontime.
We did out
We used to
behind
at home.
my father's store.
We did every night.
We did
When
it on the lawn. The pine tree was first base, maple tree was second base.
My grandchildren do that now. The bird feeder is second base.
When
Did
I
you
was
all make your holes to the marbles like with
Do it.
Yes.
Exactly.
We did.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
drill a hole.
And there were two games. There was funsies and keepsies.
That's
Does
right.
that make sense?
That's right.
And you were careful. You came to school with a bag full of marbles, and you were careful which ones you shot at, because you had your favorite marbles.
Right.
And you usually didn't use those for keepsies, but someone would challenge you, say, I want you to play that one for keepsies. And sometimes you'd take a chance, and sometimes you'd lose your favorite marbles.
It was bootsies and shoots.
Boots and shoots.
when I was in the 4th grade, I had Mr. Clonin, who's now in the primary school, I think. And he used to do a contest with all of his students every day, and whoever won could stay inside the class during recess and play marbles. Yeah.
And funsies, I don't know if you know what funsies and keepsies were, but funsies meant you played and you always kept your own marbles no matter who won.
Right.
But keepsies was if you lost your marbles to whoever you were playing with.
Early gambling, right?
So, how old were you when you got your first job?
What was the question?
How old were you when you got your first job?
I was 15 when I went and worked at the Windham Drive-In, and that was outside of babysitting, but I was 15.
15. I got a license at 15 without taking driver's ed.
Didn't have driver, Mr. Ferry?
Didn't have to take driver's ed, right?
And 15 was my first job away from the farm.
In the fish factory.
I was 9, but I had no choice.
In the store, I
In the
guess.
store.
Fourth place.
Yeah,
Family
yeah,
business.
yeah.
Did you ever visit the library?
I used to visit the South Windham Library.
which is up
The
here.
little building is moved up here now.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we did have the
Schools have a
resource
lot of
books,
books, yeah.
school library, more than town library.
Remember the smell of that?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Ian?
This is like a clearly like it would have to be like amazing if this question like was answered like correctly. Not really.
All right, we'll do our best.
My apartment was built in the 50s. And I want to see if you guys remember. It was on 302, near 302. I want to. Did any of you like ride past it or see like a blue apartment near there?
What area?
It was I think
North Windham?
Down by Falmouth Road?
What about the ones across from your house?
What's it near?
Those are the 60s.
It's.
They weren't built in the 50s.
I'm not really good with directions, but I know it was on I think it was it's near 172 Roosevelt Trail. Scott? Do you know what it's like called?
Is there like a landmark that you can think of? Another building that might be recognized?
There's a big forest near it, and there's 3 apartments.
That's a hard one.
What's
And it's
the
interesting
closest store?
What's I think it's the Big Apple.
You're talking
Oh.
But
Down by the Swan.
I don't know. Was she talking
I
about the
think so.
motel?
I'm guessing maybe.
Yeah, because there's regular people there now, because I had to go
Right.
get
Yeah.
the census.
When we grew up, there weren't a lot of apartments, and mostly people had their
Yeah.
own houses. People lived in the upstairs of the store
Right.
and had apartments there, but there weren't a lot of apartments. I'd say 99% of us, 95% of us.
North
lived-
Windham had more apartments up there because of where Booty's Corner, do you know where 302 and Dairy Queen and
it's
Walgreens is? There were apartment buildings around there a lot. The old post office used to be about where Cumberland Farms is now.
There were people who
And
turned
they
into
were,
apartments.
they were old homes that people turned into apartments. Across the street was the grocery store. You know where, I was gonna say it was the fire barn was, there's an old building that ended up to be Rustlers and
Charlie
all of
Biggs.
those. That area there were apartments.
Well, back to the first job thing. I just think you guys might be interested in how much you were paid for our first job.
50 cents an hour.
Mine, I didn't contribute, but I will tell you, it was 7th grade. Got on my bicycle and went to a nearby farm in Windham Center, Hawks Farm, and picked strawberries all morning long until it got really hot, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was paid 7 cents for each quart of strawberries that I picked. 7 cents. So for that morning, 7 a.m. until about 11:30, I would make like $1.12, $1.10. Good money. Good money.
Maybe to put that in perspective, here are some prices that will surprise you probably. In 1962, how much do you suppose a postage stamp was? 4 cents. Okay. How about a gallon of gas?
I think I remember it being something near $1.
16 cents.
A gallon of gas was 28 cents.
Oh.
Talk about us having sticker shock as prices went up.
And of course, at fairs, on Sundays, they'd offer you 5 gallons for $1.
Yeah. A movie ticket, what are you supposed to go to the movies cost in 62? $1. Okay. Average rent was $110 a month. A new car, how much do you suppose a new car was? Like a Ford or a Chevy in 62?
What do you think?
Used
$200-300?
Oh, no, $2,924 for a new car.
New. Brand new.
2,000. I think the average new car now is what, 35,000? Average income for a family, $5,550. A new house is 62. $12,550.
Colin, you had your hand up earlier. Did you have something you wanted to ask?
Can you remember stores or like attractions that were in Windham that now aren't that you miss?
What did he say?
Didn't hear you.
What?
Windham Drive-In Theater. Attractions or entertainments in town.
Roller skating,
Lakeland Dance Hall.
Lakeland Dance Hall.
Where Hannaford is right now.
No, the drive-in was in North Windham.
Of course, Patsy's store was a landmark in South Windham.
Oh, and we had-
Everybody knew that.
All kinds of questions. That one in the back, I don't heard them.
Stand up when you can ask a question.
Right. So you said that you got paid like she said stand up. Oh, excuse me. Right. So you said you got paid like $1 or like 60 cents. What do you have like chores or an allowance?
I had an allowance, and it was 25 cents a week. When I got into middle school, which we called junior high, it was 50 cents a week. So I made a lot more mowing lawns and picking strawberries and peas for the farmers.
Oh, what did you do in the summer?
Big strawberries.
Big strawberries.
Yeah.
Hung out with friends, swam in Ditch Brook.
Because we knew everybody in our neighborhood, so there was always somebody to get together with and play something. We have a bunch of kids in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
One family had 8 kids, we had 5, and our neighbors had 4 and 3, so we always had.
There were always friends around.
And there were lots of swimming holes, popular swimming holes around. And there was one called Devil's Den. You know where Blue Seal Feeds is?
Yeah.
You go halfway down to Gambo Road, take a left into the woods and go down the river. There was a rope swing there.
Cassidy, you have a question?
Where did you like to go eat?
Eat?
Yeah.
Coal
There weren't any
Farm.
restaurants.
Yes, that's
Coal
Top
Farms.
Top of the Hill was
I miss
one
Coal Farm.
Yes. Yeah, Top of the Hill was there.
People didn't go out to eat.
You could afford it, really.
Coal Farms.
I think that was there later. That's where we used to go after dances.
Right,
Yeah.
because we had nothing else.
After basketball games and dances, we'd all pile in a car and head for Coal
Coal
Farm.
Farm, probably the
There
most
was,
popular one.
Patsy's.
Patsy's.
The very first McDonald's in Maine, 1963, junior and high school. We'd head into, what's it,
St.
St.
John
John
Street.
Street?
Yeah.
And how much were the hamburgers?
15 cents.
Yep. A great cheap date.
She's had her hand up quite a while.
Yeah, go ahead, Sue.
Was there still a house across the road from the school on High Street?
What's left of it?
Across.
What, the JAS
Across the
school?
road from, yes.
From John Andrews
There
School.
were
Yeah.
several
There's
houses.
Several houses.
Yeah.
Like directly across the
Oh,
road.
those were there when we were going to school.
Yeah.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
grandmother
Yeah.
lives across the road.
Most of those on High Street were mill houses.
And who was that? Who was your grandmother?
That's not.
Who was it?
Cindy Smith.
Smith?
Smiths.
And a lot of those houses, as somebody said, were owned by the big mill that was there, and the workers got to live in those houses. And at one point, they painted all of the houses red. And that's why that area was known as Red City. And the Red City Ale House is named because of the red houses.
And you know, right behind those, down Depot Street, Depot Street is called Depot Street because there was a train depot.
Yeah.
And the trains came out of there, I don't know how many times a day.
Twice.
But and so, train depot, yeah.
They go up to the mountain in the morning, around 8 o'clock, and then around 5:30, the train would come back down through.
And they blew the whistle.
Yes, and my grandmother would say,
Pardon?
if you can hear that train whistle, it's gonna rain.
Up here.
That was, yeah, up here, yeah.
Yeah, my friend and I took the train from South Windham to Brownfield. That was a real big adventure.
Wow.
Anya.
Where did you guys go for dates?
McDonald's.
The drive-in.
The drive-in was very popular for that. Roller skating.
Bowling.
We had dances almost every weekend
Exactly.
at the old high school. There were
Yeah.
always dances. They had a payphone outside, so if you weren't lucky enough to get somebody to give you a ride home, you'd have to call home. And what you do is you dial the number and hang up before you had to put your money in, because then my father would say, okay, it's time to go get her, you know, so.
Was it Lakeland, the roller skating also was
Yeah.
a dance hall
Yeah.
as well, in the Westbrook Armory
Yeah.
for dances.
So, when you turned to Depot Street, wasn't there like, I forgot, like a place where you can get pizzas like called the corner or something like that? Like, there's
Down
a
in
big
South-
sign. Yeah, there's still a sign.
The sign says, "Welcome to Patsy's Corner."
Yeah.
Patsy was my grandfather.
Oh, that's
And that building is kind of designed like the building the store building. And I grew up in an apartment called the store, which I've been gone for 10 years maybe now. But anyway, so Patsy was my grandfather, and they put that sign on the building, which was.
You had the best pizzas and Italians around.
Yeah, best Italian. They were 25 cents, weren't they?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I remember when they went up to
Pizza used to be
35
75.
cents and
People
pizza
put
were
some-
50 cents or something like that.
Yeah.
Colt,
How many kids were in your school, like the grade you were in?
66.
I think we graduated 66 or 67.
83.
About 80 in my, yep.
My class was the largest to go through this high school graduation. We started with 140 children, we graduated, I think it was 110.
We had 100.
yes, Ian.
Did you have any teachers that you didn't like?
Hey, what?
Any teachers that you didn't like?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. Oh, I ended up liking it. Yeah.
And it's funny that Carol says that, because one of the strictest teachers I had was Mr. Foley. He was an English teacher. You knew business was business when you were in there, but he's also a teacher that I went back after I graduated and thanked, because he taught me how to behave, and he taught me how to do English grammar and so on.
My freshman year of school, we used to have a big, upstairs in the old school, there was a big room where we had study hall. And he was the one that was supposed to be overseeing all of us that was supposed to be studying. And a friend turned around and she and I were kind of talking. And he came right up to us and he said, you're not supposed to be talking, you're supposed to be quiet. And he says, I want you to write I don't know how many 1,000-word essay and give it to me tomorrow morning on the importance of being obedient. So I was scared to death, as everyone was, Mr. Foley. He was my height, but you still were afraid of me. And so I went home and I wrote and I tried to think and I cried and everything. And so this girl, when we got to school the next morning, she and I walked in and we went to his room and I handed it to him and she handed him hers, and he just took it and ripped it up, never read it, never did anything, and that was my introduction to Mr. Foley. And,
Yep, that's
and
Mr.
like he
Foley.
said, he was probably the teacher I would say that I remember the most. I remember a lot, but he would have been. The importance of being obedient is still here.
I had a hard story, third grade, I won't mention any names, and I did like the teacher up until this point, but I missed 2 or 3 months of third grade, and I came back, and because we had to do cursive writing, and we were learning cursive, and then writing numbers I couldn't, that was horrible. And anyway, so there was a arithmetic, we called it, a math paper, and she handed them all out, and she saved mine for last, and I was sitting right in the front. And she held it up, it was so bad. She said, can anybody read this? We go, no.
No.
And she crumpled it up and threw it on my desk and said, neither can I.
That's a great point. Here's a true story. about a 5th grade teacher when I was growing up. And it involves one of the people sitting here. And I won't say the name of the teacher, but honest to goodness, she really was horrible. Probably shouldn't have been teaching. She did the unthinkable. She said to one of my classmates, because he had a hard time reading out loud, she referred to him as being kind of stupid. Like I say, the unthinkable. Well, he went home and told his mother about that, and the next thing you know, parents are showing up the next day to confront the teacher. And while we were in session, and the teacher asked the class, I never called him stupid. I wouldn't do such a thing. And she looked at all of us in the classroom and said, Did I call him stupid? And of course, we're all frightened. We just sat there on our hands, except for one kid who raised his hand and said, yeah, you did. You did. That kid left. It's one of the people sitting here that did that. The only honest person, the only one with courage in the class. And that person was taken to another school the following week and never again joined us. I wish I joined him because I really didn't like that teacher at all. Anybody here want to speak up? Who was it?
Who was the teacher?
Should I say? Mrs. McCann.
I thought she was great.
She was not great. She was awful. She was
I can't
awful.
imagine she would do that.
She was
You
awful.
must have just pushed the wrong button.
To go along with that, when the report cards went from room to room to teachers and they could write on them, do you remember that? They weren't all printed out
Right.
necessarily in the lower grades and even junior high. And I used to get, well, whenever, but they say, Jonathan is a very lazy boy.
Yeah.
Well, maybe, but.
The truth hurts, right?
You couldn't do that now.
No.
Somebody got locked in the closet and forgotten for lunch.
What names of subjects did you study in school? Because I know some of our what we call some of our subjects might not be the same as what you guys call them.
Language.
I don't think we have what?
Industrial arts.
Well, and math was called arithmetic back then.
In the early grades.
Shorthand.
But I think most of the key subjects,
History.
science, various science classes, whether it was biology, chemistry, physics, whatever, in math, it might be algebra 1, algebra 2, geometry. So I think a lot of those things are the same. Social studies at a certain level. My son teaches social studies and math there at middle school.
Typing.
What else would
We
there
had typing
Well,
class.
somebody said shorthand. Does anybody know what that is?
Julie
It was a
can
high
still write
school
it.
class.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had it.
Yeah, but tell them what it is. I was fascinated by it.
Julie still does it.
Yep.
Go ahead.
What is shorthand?
It looks like Sanskrit or something. Well, if I had Blackboard, I could show you.
You have the whiteboard behind you.
It's a whiteboard.
Right behind you, Julie. There you go.
And it was mostly girls.
It's
I believe.
Yeah,
phonetic.
it would take it,
It's a
we would take
phonetic
notes,
language.
would use shorthand, because no computers, no cell phones,
Right.
a lot of differences.
Tell us what you're writing.
And while she's writing, the town clerk in Windham would take her notes in shorthand. None of the rest of us could read them, but she would come out after a meeting with pages and pages of notes using the shorthand and then transfer it to typewritten so we could read it.
Well, it's phonetic. It's not, you wouldn't spell it all. This is an if, and that's an S, so that makes this. That's an S, is. The dot is an A. This is a, that's G, a G, a high G, for good. And then this is time, T-M, together. It's
I
time.
never would have made it.
So you just wrote, "This is a good time"?
Yes.
And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
This would be your name, Walter.
Okay. What's that?
U-R-L-T. Well, and R. Walter. And blunt would be L-U-N-T. That's called Greg. There was different kinds. Greg was the most common.
Is what was taught here.
Because I had it in high school for some reason, I don't know why. Then I went to a business college in Boston and had to take it down there as well.
In typing.
Shaw.
Problems of democracy.
I was gonna say, problems to democracy is one that probably doesn't exist anymore, but it was a
And we've
very
got bigger
interesting.
problems with it.
Yeah, it was a little bit like
It
civics.
was.
Who's next?
Yep.
Did you guys get detention in school? And if so, what was like the funniest story on how you got it?
Funny story about detention.
I had my first and maybe my only detention at the old school up on the hill. The bus kids got dismissed first. Those who brought their cars to school had to wait. I'm on my way out to the bus one day and a friend of mine yells, "Gary, I've got my car, come with me." Well, the problems of democracy teacher's room was right there in the windows, and she saw us going to the car when should have been getting on the bus, and we both got detention. So Mrs. Black gave me my only detention, but she was right.
Were you the ones that took Mr. Dinsmore's Volkswagen and lifted it, put it in between two cars so we couldn't even get it out?
I plead the Fifth Amendment.
It wasn't between two cars, it
What
was
was it?
between the two pillars
Oh, okay.
that are still up there.
Yeah, I only had to stay in for, I don't remember detention, probably it was, but I had to stay in from recess a couple of times because I put a tack in a kid's chair. And he said,
I remember someone that was in your class and Walter's class in the same study hall, and he'd been talking, and the teacher went up to him and told him she didn't want to hear another peep out of him. And he kind of sat there a minute and went, beep. And I can remember him being lifted out of his chair and then put back down in the chair, which now would never be thought of.
Did you just name me?
I did not name you. I said it was in your class.
Oh, okay.
You're much older than I.
That didn't happen to me. I behaved. I went all through junior high and high school without a detention. I behaved.
amazing.
You know, they talked about Mr. Folan. I was frightened of school. I really was. I was scared to go to school for most of my school career. Was afraid of a lot of my teachers, and I was put in Mr. Folan's class. And the only time I misbehaved in high school was getting up and leaving his class because I didn't want him. I conducted a sit-in at the guidance office until you put me back in Mr. Dinsmore's class where I was, and very happy. I'm not moving. And they did it for me.
I did the same thing.
You did?
I had him for 2 years, and told him I didn't belong in his class because he taught college English.
Yep.
And so I wanted to transfer to Mr. Dinsmore's class. And he says, well, why do you think you should be in his class? And I said, I don't think I belong here. And so he said, okay, you go talk to Mr. Dunn and tell him why. So I went to the office, and Mr. Folan followed me. So I led my case. I got Mr. Dinsmore that year. My senior year, I had Mr. Folan again. But Mr. Folan, I do respect.
Can I just add one thing to the detention thing? In our day, in the old schools, these three-room schoolhouses, Tooth and John Andrew, they had coat rooms.
Yeah.
And you'd go in one door and you'd hang your coats or whatever up, and then you'd come out the other and go to your seat. So sometimes you were disciplined and you had to go stand in the coat room. And it wasn't very light in those places. But also you had to stand in the corner in front of everybody.
Yeah.
You just face the corner and just stand.
I have a coat room story from my mother, who went to school in the 1920s. And some kids had stolen her lunch money, or some boy had stolen her lunch money. And my grandmother caught her going out of the house with a mouse trap. She was gonna put it in the kid's pocket. So we would steal more money.
That's what terrible things we all did,
Yeah,
right?
Question. While riding your bikes, did you ever, if the brakes didn't work, did you use your foot and then grind your shoes?
Sneakers.
Drag your feet.
Oh, yeah.
Because I sure did.
I do that even when my brakes do work.
Did you ever ride double, you know how on the handlebars?
Yes,
and all?
yes.
I did, I was over in the village over across the river, and I was the passenger, and I know who was driving, but it was a girl. Anyway, my foot got caught in the spokes.
Oh, you were on the handlebars?
Right by Sawyer's store, yeah.
Oh.
Brother did the same.
I was on the crossbar.
Let's see, we've got a couple in the back who've had their hands up. Kanan?
So if you do remember, do you know anybody with the last name Green? Or Greens?
Say it again?
With the last name Green?
Green?
Yeah.
Not in our class. So.
I was gonna say, I know Michael Green from the Mad Mike's restoration, but he was much younger than us.
Are you thinking a particular one? Is that your last name?
Shirley Green?
Is that a relative of yours?
Yeah.
What was the name, the full name?
Shirley Green?
Shirley Green?
Must have been younger than us.
Sorry.
Yeah. Holt.
So I was wondering, you said your son teaches social studies. Would his name happen to be Doug Elder?
Yes.
He's my social studies teacher.
Oh, I was just in the staff band with him. That's why I was here.
I know.
I hear he has a unique way of giving test directions. Have you taken those for the PSAs or some tests? Standardized?
I have not taken the standardized test with him, no. Though there is the policy, if your name is on the paper, it will be torn apart. So
I've heard he gives them in different, what do you call it? Not languages, but I'm going blank on accents. Yeah. Just to make it more interesting, I guess.
Celia.
Did you ever have the handlebars come off your bike while you were riding?
Oh, yeah.
More often than come off would be to like flip right down, because you could adjust them and so
They'd
on.
loosen up,
And if they were too loose, they'd flip right down on you.
I remember going off over my head.
Wait, Colt, remember that happening to Jacoby? That's why he was one arm at
Yep.
the beginning of the year.
What was the worst injury you guys ever had during your childhood?
Skiing accident.
Mine would
Yeah, they
probably
did.
be
That's
the
why we
worst.
had
Oh,
Chase
yes.
has a question.
Listen to this.
When I was 5 years old, I lived over off from the River Road in the North Windham part of River Road. And my father ran a sawmill that was there. There was a big sawmill. And he was up one day working on the pipes. And I lived in that same neighborhood. And I was told I was never to go up on top of the sawdust pile. And not minding like I was supposed to, I decided my father was up there, I would go up there. And so I crawled up the sawdust pile, and then the sawdust was so high, the electrical wires all ran the mill. And I grabbed a hold of the high tension wire.
Oh.
And my smallest mark is here. I have burns that I received, and missing toe, and place in my head, that I had to have skin grafting done. But at that time, there was no rescues in town. Luckily, my father and mother were big in, my father in the fire department. My mother had Girl Scout troops and first aid, and so they both worked on me. And one of the neighborhood people who was on the fire department at the time was 19 years old. he drove the car that came to get me, and I kept going on them, and we headed towards the hospital, and we met the local doctor, which is Dr. Branson, in Bora, and he got in, and he and my father kept working on me, and I did make it, and spent two months in what is now Maine Medical Center having skin grafting and all that.
Didn't know that.
That was a stupid little 5-year-old kid.
I never knew that. Wow.
I don't play on sawdust pile.
My grandfather had a nice camp, a picnic area on Presumpscot River. It's now called Dundee Park, which I'm sure most of you, but that used to belong to our family. And we used to go down there every Sunday for various water sports. My dad thought it would be fun. Let's go down and build a water ski jump. And we'll jump on water skis. We were down there, we built it one weekend, anchored it out practically in the middle, and he thought it'd be a good idea if I tried it first. All right, so strapped on the skis, and 35 horsepower Johnson or pushing a wooden boat, went over that thing, 15, 20 miles an hour, and I made it over all right, but it was coming down that was the problem. When I came down, the tow ropes were all homemade, broom handles, and it went across my knee and broke the tow handle itself. My whole leg turned black, and I limped for many weeks after that. Just a black leg, no broken bones or anything, but every muscle from the ankle to my hip was sprained and black. I'll never forget that.
I have a question for you, Walter. When was Dundee Pond made? When did it?
1967.
Okay.
And
That's when the dam went in?
Well, that was left over from the canal.
No, the dam was in 1904.
Okay. But they just closed it up to make the pond?
Yes,
Okay.
that's right.
Okay.
That's right. My grandfather had the property from the 1930s to 1967. And it was easy to take away from him because he didn't have a claim on the land. He simply had verbal handshake permission from SD Warren to use it. So it got taken away.
Okay.
Chase.
So, do you guys remember like the coldest ever temperature and like the hottest ever temperature?
Snowstorm of 1954, the Windham snowplow was going by my house and couldn't make it, and it was completely covered over with snow. There's only a little bit of it sticking out, and that was a snowplow. That was a big winter storm we had in 54.
It would get really cold. I don't think it's much different than today. I mean, but we haven't been going below zero too much, but we've gone below zero.
Yeah, a lot more than that.
It's the kind of weather in the winter that makes you nostrils
Yeah.
thick, you know. But
Our bus driver, we were going up the hill by Myers Farm up to Windham Hill, and it was Ralph Lowell, I think, and he couldn't make the hill. And in those days, I don't think they even had snow tires. And he had chains, so he had to get out and get these chains onto the bus. And of course, the older kids shut the door and wouldn't let him back in the bus. Just pranking. But I'll never forget that, how he had to put those chains on when he finally let it in so that we could make it up with the hill.
I think we have time for the last two questions. So Ian, I think you had your hand up.
So you might have not heard of it, but there is a campground that was built in 1961. I'm currently wearing a shirt. It's called Terrace Pines. Have you ever heard of Terrace Pines? It's like in like the start of it's in Hampshire.
On the border?
We had a campground in Windham,
Yes,
which was Manchester's campground, which is now in the area where Walmart is. When we were growing up, there was a big A-frame building, and they had a campground there. And when I coached Little League softball, we used to use their baseball field for the girls' Little League teams.
I remember that.
And they held
I was born in
like
'84.
Girl Scout Camporees.
Right.
All the old home days.
Oh, Becky, I have a question for you. When you talked about Girl Scouts, there was something in, something special that took place not too far from you quite frequently with camping that was on River Road. Do you remember?
Cardinal Troop Camp.
Yes, yes.
Oh, on Covered Bridge Road?
What's that?
Covered Bridge Road?
River Road. Yeah.
Just
Right-
above Covered Bridge.
right line.
What was it?
Cardinal Troop
Oh,
Camp.
Cardinal.
Okay.
Edith
Bell,
Bell
I was
and
gonna say.
Betty Polkinen would take, there must have been about 20 of us down next to the river. We had no electricity, no water other than the river. We lived in tents for a week, and they kept us entertained for a week.
I know. The old fire barn in North Windham, which was the restaurant back most recently, that was where our Girl Scouts was. We had Girl Scouts there, and Boy Scouts were there. And then every Halloween, they used to have a whole town Halloween party. And everyone would dress up in costumes and walk around, and that was all upstairs there at the restaurant.
Okay, Anya, last question.
Did you have any pets growing up?
Of course.
And if so, what were they?
Cats, dogs, hens, ducks.
And of course, being on a farm, parents had cows. There were always 2 or 3 milk cows, and then raised a beef animal every year, and raised a pig every
Yeah,
year.
Joe the pig.
So we always had pets.
We had horses, first work horses. I did work in the woods in the wintertime, and then I had saddle horses, riding horses, in addition to course, dogs over the years.
My father raised rabbits. We had over 100 rabbits. We used to show them. We had some other ones do that.
Junior high, we had I was at Field Allen when I had junior high school. And every winter we used to have a big snow day, and we'd have all kinds of sports things that had to do with snow and everything. And then when we had another time during the year when we used to all get together and they'd have 3-legged races and all kinds of stuff. So that was right after junior high.
Any last?
How many of you went to Arlington?
Went to where?
Arlington.
1 week, they shipped us back to JA.
Well, I did 1 week in
We hated it
JA
up
and went
there.
out to Arlington.
And where was the middle school?
There was no such thing.
It was junior high, Field Allen.
At
Field
Field
Allen.
Seventh and eighth grade.
7th and 8th.
6th grade.
I've got a story about Field Allen
All right.
and high school. I went 7th grade in Field Allen and 8th grade at the high school. And the last day of school, every student was take a chair or a desk or something and carry it across the road to next year's
Oh my
junior
God.
high.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah.
Well, thank you all for coming. This has been great. I bet we could ask a lot more questions, but what do you say, everyone? Thank you. You're welcome.